Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Pi Day, apparently. I know this is not a big one for me. I don't even know how to talk like a pie, so my favorite is to talk like a pirate day, and that doesn't come until September. I think I've actually learned, at least what month that happens in. Tomorrow's the Ides of March, more famous than, I think, even Pi Day, but these days, I don't know, everybody thinks these mathematical jokes are funny. So, here we go. I don't have any for you. Don't look to me for mathematical jokes. I am a mathematical joke. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I can tell you about 3.14. 1415, in fact. That much I remember. What to do with it? Relatively little idea about that. But I can tell you what we can do to round out the show today. Oh my God, I gotta quit this immediately. Lots to do today. Again, no Greg Dworkin. I have the... what should we? Normally that phrase is followed up with the distinct pleasure to announce, but it's not a pleasure at all. Some of you may have guessed. Hey, he's absent. What's going on? Greg has COVID. COVID has made it around to Greg Dworkin's house at long last, 4 years into the pandemic. So good job wearing masks, washing your hands, and avoiding illness. That's better than most, I'll say. He's already been to the doctor and got medication in hand, and so hopefully this is one of those things that after the 5-day course of I didn't know, ask which medication it was, and I guess it's, are they still giving Paxlovid for that? Or have they moved on to some brand new thing that I don't know how to pronounce or anything? Anyway, if it's that or something like it, I assume everything is tasting like you're sucking on a dirty penny now by this point. And I hope you're still able to enjoy your morning coffee. But his voice is not at its strongest, so unable to join us for today. Maybe by Monday everything will be back in shape. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he's highly vaccinated. He knows how to take care of himself. He's got the medication. Although my experience and a lot of people's experience of even having gotten multiple vaccinations and updates and boosters, that when you get a hold of Paxlovid, it tends to mean that you'll be testing positive for some time, but the symptoms are minimal and you feel fine. So, a lot of people I know had a good 10 plus days after which they were feeling fine, in which they were still testing positive. So, you stay home, you rest, you do your best not to spread infection to anybody else, and you feel okay. And you catch up on binge watching television and maybe do a podcast or two. All right, so best of luck. Get well soon. Everybody can go and tape $10 bills or $100 bills. What are we supposed to put on the front door when you have flu? I forget exactly the denomination that we're using in that test. Because this time, though, if you do it and you put it on his front door, he'll just go get them, and then he'll have lots of money. So that's not a poor test, unless it makes you poor. Anyway, the point is, do it in moderation. Okay, so first up this morning, we'll just make this first up, because this one is on the screen already. A follow-up of what we were talking about yesterday. Lauren Boebert, everybody's favorite, I don't know what, person that we hope will lose. I mean, there's lots of people we hope will lose next time around. But one of our favorite incumbents from Colorado who we want to lose very shortly. Okay, how about that? Narrow it down a little bit. Anyway, as we were trying to explain yesterday, and I didn't have in front of me a really good explanation of the chronology of the special election that Ken Buck's resignation will trigger, then the nominating primary to pick a Republican candidate for the 2-year term beginning in 2025 in that district. Ken Buck being in the 4th district, is that right? And Boebert currently in the 3rd, and Buck's resignation sets off a whole chain reaction, which, even though I can't give you the exact chronology, and although Bruce McFarlane was using the social medias the other day to remind me that it may be the case that the nominating primary in June and the special election may be concurrent. And I think maybe even the article that we read might have stated that as fact right up front. And then by the time we got around to the complicated stuff, I had forgotten that they might have said that they were concurrent. I mean, that saves money for the state, presumably, or whoever. I guess if the state is already running the primary, I don't know. In some states, the states run the primaries. In some states, the parties pay for primaries. So who knows? But if there's a special election, the state is likely paying for that. So at any rate, it's a very weird thing. And the issue was whether or not Lauren Boebert wanted to let someone else, or didn't want to, but would be handed this as a mandate, thanks to the outcome of one of these elections, that someone else would be running as the incumbent, a very short-term incumbent, a brand-new incumbent, but an incumbent nonetheless in the 4th District, while she tried to win the nomination to take that seat, and that she would be at a distinct disadvantage if that were the case. And now it looks like it will be the case, because the Morning Digest over at Daily Kos starts out with the headline that Boebert won't run in this special election. They have that option. It's not a smart option, but if you're out of money or a terrible politician and not really prepared to take this challenge on, maybe it's the better of the two options. But here she is saying she won't run in the special because she's too busy kvetching about a rigged election. Everyone loves the rigged election language. So, yeah, all right, well, she's going to start off with that, and, that makes her super MAGA, and we have that going for us. And their report here says that Lauren Boebert announced yesterday, that she would not run in the June 25th special election to replace her soon-to-be former colleague, fellow Colorado Republican Ken Buck, but would continue to compete for a full 2-year term in the primary taking place that same day. So that's the answer about the chronology. So special election on June 25th to fill the end of Ken Buck's term, but also the primary. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess, I don't know what. There's not that much advantage. Now that I'm thinking about the idea of there won't be any opportunity for anyone to run in the primary as an incumbent. But the winner of the special election will face the voters they won't face the voters unless they win the nomination on June 25th. So I don't know. It's actually quite confusing. But suffice to say that yesterday's headline gave us the chance to say that Ken Buck was, as they said in the reports, was screwing Lauren Boebert over. You mean, you get it. But it got us the chance to make that joke twice, as a matter of fact. So here we go. That's what we've learned. She will compete for the full 2-year term in the primary taking place that same day. So why not also throw your name in the hat for the special election? I don't know. I mean, it's the same day. I really don't see the downside for this. Boebert, who is leaving behind the 3rd District in western Colorado to campaign for the more conservative 4th at the other end of the state, characteristically used her declaration to accuse Buck and the Uni Party of announcing his resignation the previous day as part of a swampy backroom deal to try to rig an election. When, what is this? When Notice asked Buck? Notice. I don't even know. What am I looking at? Notice. I don't know. When Notice, is that a news outlet, or is that like POTUS? It's capitalized. I'm baffled by this one. And when they asked Buck on Tuesday whether he'd thought about how his departure might impact Boebert, he replied, "No, I didn't consider that." Maybe, maybe not. There's a little bit more here, so why not read on? Republican leaders in Buck's 4th District will form a special committee to select the party's nominee for the special election. So it's not really going to run in it, per se, as I'm going to put my name into contention to be chosen. And she probably figures they will not choose her. So, therefore, I won't compete. Because if I don't compete, I can't truly lose. Maybe that's what's behind this. So they'll form a special committee, select the party's nominee for the special election, which the Colorado Sun's Jesse Paul says must convene sometime within the next few weeks. And while State Party Chair Dave Williams told Colorado Politics that the body will be made up of local party leaders and elected officials, Paul notes that Republicans haven't said exactly who will be on the committee and how it will operate. Boebert also used a Tuesday appearance on social media with two of her far-right allies, Florida Representative Matt Gaetz and the disgraced George Santos, to express her hope that the committee would select someone who will not run for a full 2-year term. That's a fairly useless selection, but sometimes you can find such a person who just wants to be a member of Congress on a technicality for a few weeks. Okay. GOP leaders, however, have no obligation to listen to Boebert or Gaetz, who declared that is some crazy banana republic, stuff you're doing in Colorado, because that's what a mature person he is. Anyway, Greg's not here to say it, but
that's bullshit.
There you go. So everyone wants to use the S word today. Oh boy. Anyway, and a trio of Republicans who were already campaigning for the full term say they will seek the party's nod for the special. Conservative talk radio host Deborah Flora, former State Senator Ted Harvey, and Logan County Commissioner Jerry Sonnenberg. But State Representative Mike Lynch, who stepped down as minority leader in January before his caucus could eject him over a previously undisclosed 2022 drunk driving arrest, isn't so sure. Don't know how they're going to conduct it really or when, he told Paul of the special election nomination. The State Democratic Party, meanwhile, says that its special election committee, which includes about 215 members, if you'd like to know about that, it sounds like it was organized in New Hampshire, will make its selection by April 1st. They probably should have chosen a different day, but they could have some fun with it now. The 4th District, which is based in eastern Colorado in the Denver exurbs, favored Donald Trump 58-39 in 2020, so the Democratic nominee will face a tough battle in June. But they could draw a total idiot or lunatic as their opponent. But what's interesting is that I guess the hints were from yesterday's articles that the committee is likely to be populated by normal-ish Republican adults who don't appreciate Boebert types, and although they were, I guess, fine with Ken Buck types. So maybe a talk radio host might be the kind of person they would select, but they might be just mature enough to say, yeah, we don't really need the Lauren Boebert show around here. She's not even from this part of the state. Maybe we want to say rule out the drunk driving guy too and select, an otherwise indistinguished Republican suit who will read what's in the box. So, very likely to be the case there. Good, it might be the end of Lauren Boebert, and that will be just fine. So, good riddance if they can rig it up that way. Get it? Rig it in Colorado. I'm for rigging when it comes to Colorado. How about that? All right, let's see. Let's see what else is on the front page this morning of the Daily Coast, just to see what else. Well, actually, it's a lot of the roundups and such, which might be useful, although they're not Greg's roundup. So, it's a little bit different. But we have our own roundup, of course, and it exists in Pocket. There's a couple things to share with you. Actually, I saw Adam Bonin on the social medias this morning suggesting that it might be a somewhat entertaining read to look at the transcript of the fascist guy, the former fascist guy on CNBC's Squawk Box this would have been on Monday, where, he's giving a relatively incoherent interview. It's live. The transcript is unedited, unofficial at this point. And so they got a little bit of a mix-up as they ask Donald Trump what he thought of the State of the Union. And, of course, he said, many people are saying it was the worst State of the Union ever given. What you had up there, an angry guy dividing the nation, the opposite of what normal people had to say about the State of the Union. But it's unclear to me whether this is just a transcription error or a hearing error on Donald Trump's part or on the part of the transcriber. But at first it didn't register with me what the hell he was talking about, which is often the case. And then you're looking for the kernel of truth in there. What is he spinning into his notion of the truth? And I missed the State of the Union on purpose. But I think it made it back to me that Biden spent some time, I guess, toward the beginning of the speech, describing and lining up his intent to put the administration behind fighting the phenomenon known as shrinkflation. And I guess he illustrated the point by talking about, I think this was the case, about Snickers candy bars and how they had gotten smaller over time, but were charged, that's what shrinkflation is. The product is getting smaller, but they're charging the same or more for the unit, even though they're putting less and less in it for the consumer. Not that, anyone was buying Snickers bars as durable goods or even valued nutrition, but whatever. You get the idea. That's an easy to understand and commonly recognized version of shrinkflation. And this greatly disappointed Donald Trump, who then went on a small rant about you can tell that Biden is unfit for the presidency because he started out the whole speech for some reason talking about stickers. Why are you talking about stickers? No one wants to talk about stickers. It's very stupid. And it's not clear whether he actually said stickers or really said Snickers, but the transcript was like, I don't know what Snickers is. He must have said stickers. So, I don't know. We're going to have to clear that one up, except, we don't really have to clear that one up. No one really cares. It's funnier that way. And he actually does go ahead and, what's the transcript? I found it hard to believe, but I think you probably will, and we'll see what happens. But it was really a speech on division and hate more than anything else. Starts off by talking about stickers. You don't really want to talk about stickers, even though it's true that they put a little less than a bag, but you have more interesting examples. A little less than a bag. Like, he might not, I don't know, he may be talking about stickers. But that you have more interesting examples of inflation and other things that he was trying to point out than that. And, okay, maybe true. You could have a lot. You have a lot of big league things you could be talking at. Like energy, prices through the roof, and food prices through the roof. But no, it was probably the worst State of the Union ever made. According to many. That's not according to me. Although according to me, it was also, but I haven't heard too many of them. That's apparently what he had to say about that, and I don't know, that's a transcription error either. That's not according to B. I guess it is. I probably supposed to be, that's not according to me. It was the worst State of the Union ever given, not according to me, but then also according to me. Like he just confesses that. But then also I haven't heard too many of them because I'm like that other guy with the podcast and I never listen. So, I don't know. It seemed interesting, but it's a very long read. I don't know how long he stayed on the show. And the host is a bit of a suck up, which is ridiculous at this point, but that's CNBC for you. And, perhaps we'll comb through it and see whether there's any other funny, ridiculous tidbits. However, at the moment, I just want to alert you to that and say production staff, interested parties, whatever, maybe you want to comb through this thing and look for the weirdest missteps or misstatements. But I'm sure someone else will be on top of that soon. Aaron Rupar will likely have the latest sometime soon. So back to Pocket. where we can check in on a couple of other things that I put aside to share with you. Brief news bit here reported by NBC News. The Republican National Committee, as we read, has purged a considerable portion of its staff and brought in Lara Trump as co-chair of the National Committee, so I guess to facilitate the looting of the committee so that it can have a Trump in the position, the crucial position, holding the rubber stamp that says yay and nay as to whether or not the nominee of the party, also a Trump, can use official party funds for pretty much whatever they say they want to and not get themselves in any more trouble, not get the party in any more trouble. So long as the rules are followed and the chairs and appropriate authorities say you can use money this way, it's nobody's business but theirs. So you install Trumps and Trump loyalists in those positions and steal all the money. Along the way, they're also hiring new lawyers, which is amazing because Trump is notoriously bad at hiring good lawyers. But one, he doesn't care because what's the difference? If he loses all of his cases and gets convicted but still wins the presidency, he pardons himself and forces the DOJ to drop all the other charges. And as for those charges which might be state charges and traditionally are understood not to be within the purview of a presidential pardon, F that. The Constitution now says they are within his purview, and you can kiss my ass, and 5 magic robes agree for some strange reason. And also I've drowned parts of their family. So, connect the dots, I guess. Anyhow, the new lawyers are in, and guess what? They're his old lawyers. Yes, this is an easy way of handling. I mean, nobody's going to hire these idiots for real anyway, so they might as well take these fake jobs where they might not get paid. If they're working directly for Donald Trump, the chances are they really won't get paid. But if they're working for some entity controlled by Donald Trump where someone else's money is at stake, they can be on hand to whine and cry if they need to in order to get somebody, some Trump or Trump loyalist, to shunt money aside from a non-Trump bank account to pay them, or they might even be able to approve it for themselves. So who's getting hired? The RNC has hired lawyers Charlie Spies. I'm guessing it's spelled spies, like we're a den of spies here at the RNC, but I knew somebody who had a similarly spelled last name and they said Spies. So maybe we'll go with that. Whose name I don't recognize, but maybe we'll find out a little something about him in this article. The name I do recognize is Christina Bobb. Do you remember Christina Bobb? Christina Bobb was the other lawyer initially involved along with, what was his name? Oh boy. I can't remember, but maybe the article, wasn't his first name was Evan. Is that what I remember about him? That's it. Anyway, these two were the idiots in charge of signing the paperwork for the FBI. Sign here to attest that you've searched the Pervolago Sex Dungeon Club and found no additional other classified information. It's all done, right? Yes, absolutely. We sign here on the dotted line on penalty of perjury. Okay, you said it. Penalty of perjury. Wait a minute. Penalty of what now? What did I sign? Because, as it turns out, none of that was true. So Christina Bobb was one of the two, and I think she was the one who showed up first when the FBI showed up on scene and the Trump people said, oh my God, we need a lawyer here, quick. She was the first one to show up, but I don't think she actually signed on the dotted line. She made Evan do that one, and now he's in trouble. And she's getting hired. So how do you like that? Christina Bobb also, just for the record, is one of the nudniks that works at One America News Network. She's I don't know if she's a stand-up reporter or so much as a legal commentator, but a common personality there, I think, on the payroll there. So that's fantastic. She actually is supposed to be in charge of, quote, election integrity efforts at the RNC. So this is tantamount to, this is one step below the fantasy play of naming Sidney Powell as special counsel to investigate the 2020 election. they're going to take Christina Bobb and install her at the RNC, where no one can fire her or complain that she's consuming public resources. Vaughn Hilliard, Ben Commissar, and Summer Concepcion have reported this piece. Let's start it and then take a break. The Republican National Committee has hired 2 new lawyers to lead its legal efforts. A source familiar with the matter told NBC News the move comes as the organization focuses on voting and, they always focus on voting, and election-related concerns following the Trump campaign's effective takeover of its leadership. Republican lawyer Charlie Spees will serve as the RNC's chief counsel. Spees recently worked for Michigan Republican Representative John James, and previously served in Mitt Romney's 2008 presidential campaign. He notably rejected the prevalent election denialism in the party. While speaking on a panel at the Conservative Political Action Committee conference in 2021, drawing shouts from the crowd. They should have beaten him at that point and left him for dead. But I guess they let him live, and now he's going to be general counsel of the RNC. The other, Christina Bobb, who has served on the Trump campaign's legal team and is a prominent figure in pushing the GOP's unfounded claims of a stolen 2020 election. So one of each, left Twix and right Twix in this package here. Shrinkflation, they shouldn't be using stickers. Anyway, she'll serve as senior counsel for election integrity, which is a huge joke. Bob confirmed she joined the RNC in a post on Twitter. She emerged as a key player in Trump's legal battles over his alleged mishandling, it was real mishandling, all right, of classified documents. In 2022, she's certified to the FBI. I guess she did do it. That all of the relevant material sought by investigators had been turned over. The information that Evan Corcoran, there it is, another Trump lawyer, told her, according to the indictment against the former president. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. A couple of other items I want to put aside perhaps for later on, and still let the social media flow here. Let the spice social media flow. But back to the RNC story. So I guess I got the two of them backwards in terms of which one tricked which into signing what. It was Evan Corcoran. According to this story, it sounds like Evan Corcoran gave the information to Christina Bobb and told her to sign the thing, and she did, which is the worst of the two outcomes, I think, in terms of the hire at the RNC. Like, you really don't want to hire the person that landed in perjury trouble in the middle of one of the nominee's most high-profile criminal charges. But, maybe you do. What a great idea. Bob has also, as we said, appeared as an on-air personality for Trump-backing right-wing media outlets One America News and also Right Side Broadcasting Network, which I've sort of barely maybe recall hearing about at some point. She attended Trump's party at his Pervolago sex dungeon residence on the night of Super Tuesday. So, I don't know, party news, in case you needed to hear about that. Spies and Bob did not immediately respond to NBC News' request for comment. The RNC's hiring of these two nudniks follows mass layoffs at the organization and the installation there of two new Trump-approved leaders, Michael Whatley, former chair of the North Carolina Republican Party and famous star of The Martian, I guess, and the group's chairman, and Lara Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law, as its co-chair, as has been previously reported. So that's always, by the way, a huge morale boost for Republican functionaries. They got laid off, and the idiot grifters got yet another job paid for with their money. Chris Lasivita, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and if not, please don't tell me. A Trump co-campaign manager was recently appointed as chief operating officer of the RNC. Sean, Cairncross, maybe, who led RNC operations from 2015 to 2016, and a whopping huge record of 2015 to all the way to 2016, was tapped by Lasivita. That's an odd way of putting it. Tapped by Lasivita to serve as his deputy. I mean, you could basically say, who led RNC operations during the 2015-2016 cycle. You know, he had 2 months of experience, December and January. Anyway, former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel announced her resignation last month after Trump endorsed Whatley to lead the organization. And then I guess that's the end of the article, because there's a little NBC Peacock thing there at the end. And I don't even know how to pronounce that. So that's the end of the words in this jumble of news mess. Okay, I mean, it's an okay article. Anyway, let's see. Some other things to share with you, including no week is complete without sharing some Amanda Marcotte commentary, this time from her usual perch at Salon magazine. This interesting and intriguing approach to things. Trump's MAGA movement is causing Republicans in Congress to hate each other. Hooray! And welcome to the party. I've hated you for a long time, but it's nice to have you here. And although I also hate you, maybe there's some room for us to share some reminiscences about people we mutually hate. And then I will ask you to stand on this mark on the carpet over here. It's the trapdoor over the alligator pit, and we'll say our goodbyes. So here's what she has to say today. It's wild what a few short months of actually getting to know a person can do for your opinion of them. That's what House Republicans seem to have learned since October, when they replaced the glad-handing Kevin McCarthy with smarmy fundamentalist Mike Johnson for the Speaker of the House role. Johnson's election was treated like a big win at the time. Republicans were unified and cheering and chanting, "Mike, Mike," like they were celebrating a championship-winning quarterback instead of a guy who serves creepy youth pastor vibes. Johnson's popularity lasted as long as an embarrassing dance craze, however. It hasn't been 5 months, and already Johnson's colleagues are pulling the Mariah Carey "I don't know her" bit. Tuesday, CNN reported that fewer than 100 House Republicans, this is big news actually, fewer than 100 House Republicans bothered to RSVP for their congressional retreat in West Virginia this week. It's spring break for Congress, meaning that less than half of the caucus showed up. Some Republicans have complained about the venue choice. It's the same all the time. Anyway, CNN's reporters note, Speaker Mike Johnson selected the Greenbrier Resort because it was family-friendly, in a break from past retreats which have taken place in sunny Florida. It's interesting because it's actually a return to the original place, or a place that Democrats have frequently retreated to as well. The Greenbrier Resort was a popular destination for retreats from both parties for quite some time, and whatever. Now they didn't get to go to Florida, so Matt Gaetz didn't get to hang out at his favorite pervert clubs, and nobody got to go and spend money at Pervalago. And so that's what happened. And instead of going there, so I guess the other half went to Florida after all. No pity for people who elected a Puritan as their leader, only to find out he's serious about taking away everyone's good time. These same people were griping to Politico last month that Johnson's presentation at the last weekend retreat ignored pertinent to member issues like how to win re-election and grow their majority. Instead, Johnson effectively delivered a sermon about declining church membership and the nation's shrinking religious identity. They're having shrinkflation there, too. Give them some stickers. They're just mad that they have to suffer the lives they're seeking to forcibly inflict on the rest of us. Aha. As fun as it is to pick on Johnson, however, it's not just him. Donald Trump and the larger MAGA movement are very much to blame. This is what radicalization does to communities. It stokes tensions and turns people against each other. Authoritarians romanticize order, imagining a society where everyone falls in line without quarrel. In the real world, however, it's hard to communicate, much less organize, without some tolerance for disagreement. When authoritarians get together, it's a clash of big egos of people who all think everyone else should unquestioningly obey them. Yeah, that's not going to work, is it? It's not just that they fight. They have no capacity to work through disagreements. Skills like listening, empathizing, or compromising run counter to the MAGA mindset. So instead, resentments and anger fester and grow. That's a good point. For instance, yet another House Republican decided to peace out before the end of his term. That's Ken Buck, of course. And apparently he didn't bother to tell Johnson he was leaving before he told the press on Tuesday. To use the sort of language permitted in a Johnson-run retreat, to heck with the speaker. It's the worst year of the 9 years and 3 months that I've been in Congress, Buck told CNN. Buck's move doesn't just continue shrinking the already small Republican majority in the House. It may also be the final nail in the coffin of the political career of Lauren Boebert, Republican of Beetlejuice is how it's ID'd here. Boebert left her more moderate Colorado district after barely eking out a victory last cycle to run in Buck's much redder one. She had a good chance of winning the primary because the local football stand's worth of identical white men running against her. We're going to split the anti-public groping vote. But now there will be no primary, just a hastily scheduled special election with candidates chosen directly by party leaders who will probably go with someone else less embarrassing than Boebert. But there will be a primary, indeed. Well, anyway, you get the idea. The whole debacle underscores another reason why the perverse incentive structure of the MAGA movement conflicts with the party's need to maintain unity in the ranks. The right-wing media ecosystem favors loudmouth trolls over boring workhorse politicians. To get name recognition, fundraising, and support, Republicans must compete with each other to see who is the most MAGA, which usually means being the most willing to alienate others with grotesque stunts, even when, as they often do, those stunts run counter to what is good for the party. Boebert is a classic example. Even before her humiliating screw-up at Beetlejuice, she spent much of her time on Capitol Hill trying to become one of the most infamous MAGA villains through nonstop stunts, like trying to bring a gun into the House chambers. Did you catch that one? Did we catch that one? Let's see. That was from back in January of 2021, early on in in her first term. Lauren Boebert leads GOP standoff with Capitol Police over metal detectors on the House floor. Okay. So, mind you, this is, for 7 days, 1 week after January 6th, she's fighting with Capitol Police over metal detectors because she wants to bring a gun onto the House floor. 1 week after someone who just got shot there. Whatever. I'm sure that was actually her argument. Someone was shot here, so I need my gun in case I need to shoot somebody. Anyway, one of her most chronic efforts, at getting attention was demanding the impeachment of President Joe Biden, which threw Boebert into constant conflict with Representative Murdery Trader Green, who also wanted the mantle of the crazy lady who wants to impeach Biden. this impeachment effort against Biden, and they did fight viciously, and they're bitter rivals. It is kind of a funny point. This impeachment effort against Biden was a bad idea for the larger GOP because he didn't commit any crimes, and lying about that threatened to turn off independent voters in swing districts that Republicans need to maintain their majority. Like she did, actually. Buck, in particular, has been vocal about how politically toxic it would be to impeach Biden by falsifying evidence. He was proved right when the House committee tasked with that saw one phony piece of, quote, evidence after another exposed in a dramatic way, including the arrest of a fake whistleblower who appears to be working for a Russian spy. Buck preferred the old-fashioned GOP strategy of pumping disinfo into the media ecosystem through lies and innuendo, but avoiding an attempt to frame someone for a crime that he didn't commit, which draws the sort of legal and press attention that backfires. But while pushing for impeachment is bad for the Republican Party, it was, for a time at least, very good for the MAGA celebrities doing it. It got them on Fox News and other popular right-wing media outlets. It juiced their fundraising. And as most of them have some level of toxic narcissism, it fueled their bottomless need for attention. For some, like Boebert, it may be the end of them. But most of the biggest MAGA holes are in safe districts and are taking over the party. Meanwhile, people like Buck and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell are being pushed out, although not fast enough. Buck and McConnell, to be clear, are no heroes. They are reactionaries who, like their MAGA counterparts, exploit bigotry and right-wing disinformation in order to push through policies that harm most Americans, to line the pockets of the already rich. But both came up in a time when, to be successful, even very conservative politicians had to learn how to build alliances and even compromise with the opposing party, though McConnell prided himself on his extra legal efforts to get around the latter when he could. They did not think it beneath them to check their own egos to hold a coalition together. Well, that's over with now, so I thought a good point and helpful in understanding, well, all the rest of the news that's going on. All right, let's see. The rest of the show, we could perhaps give over to my email inbox, which is filled with spam every day from The Hill, but usually a good portion of which I am happy to ignore. But I don't know. We should make mention of all the things that they're making mention of, including this otherwise boring and stupid side note, but it's happening and it's all over the news now. The House has easily passed, and we'll see what the Senate does with a bill that could ban TikTok. Everybody is talking about it, but the Hill is the most aggressive in pushing it into my email box, and maybe we will reward them for that, even though they don't deserve it. Rebecca Clark, I'm sure a nice person, but maybe as an institution, the Hill doesn't really deserve it, but they do the best job at promoting their work. And here's one piece of it. The House has passed this thing. It passed on a 352-65 vote on Wednesday, putting the spotlight on the Senate and how to handle the controversial legislation that has support from President Biden. One lawmaker voted present, it is noted here. The Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act. What is that? PAFA. CAA, that doesn't spell anything. Well, that's a dumb name. Well, anyway, it doesn't even make an acronym. I don't like it. Anyway, this would force ByteDance, TikTok's China-based parent company, to divest the app within roughly 5 months of going into effect or be banned from the U.S. app stores and web hosting services. It's an interesting mechanism they've designed there. The bill passed quickly through the House in a floor vote scheduled less than a week after it was first introduced by Representatives Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin, a Republican, and Democrat Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, the top lawmakers on the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Way to live rent-free in the heads of our government and to get our people to spend staff dollars on somebody who does nothing but investigate the Chinese Communist Party. The Republicans love to form new committees when they get control of the House. As you see, there's also the select committee on the weaponization of government. And, of course, the weaponization of other governments, too. It's all about weaponizing governments. Anyway, House Republicans invoked a special rule for the vote. They actually adopted a rule, huh? This is interesting. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Invoked a special rule, not adopted a special rule They invoked a special rule. Bad terminology here. Usually, special rule, in one sense, is what they use, the term they very frequently use to describe not that special, but the one use rules that they adopt to govern the debate of a bill. What the Rules Committee passes, those one-shot resolutions that say how long you'll be debating a certain underlying bill. But here they mean a special rule, like one of the standing rules. And which one do they mean? I haven't even read the rest of the sentence, but I assume it's the suspension of the rules, which is funny because that's not really a rule, is it? It's the opposite of a rule. But it is on the books that there's a rule that says if you get a 2/3 vote, you can suspend the rules and pass the bill. But that's actually just general parliamentary law. That's the way Robert's Rules of Order works, and just generally parliamentary bodies in general, if you want to suspend the rules. But okay, there you have it. House Republicans invoked a special rule for the vote that required 2/3 majority to pass, rather than the simple majority needed for most House bills to expedite the process. And unfortunately, even The Hill won't tell you what it is. And, as a industry publication, they could really just get away with saying the measure passed under suspension of the rules, requiring a 2/3 majority to pass. Republicans also raced to pass the bill in the face of opposition from former President Trump, who tried and failed to ban TikTok as president before reversing his position. So that's interesting. So he wanted to ban TikTok, failed, then said, well, that's okay. I didn't want to ban TikTok anyway. And then he's opposing this effort to ban TikTok, mostly probably because he tried to ban TikTok and failed. If Biden, quote unquote, tries to ban TikTok and succeeds, how's that going to look? So, does it make any sense for him to be on the other side? No. Except, although maybe it makes some sense. People, I'm sure, have already speculated, well, maybe he's being paid off by the Chinese in order to oppose it. I don't know whether that's really necessary. I think he was probably willing to do it for free. Anyway, supporters of the bill say it aims to curb a national security threat posed by ByteDance, which I hope it's not trying to curb national security. We actually want to have a more robust national security. But anyway, they're worried about ByteDance, which they say could share sensitive data from American users with the Chinese government. TikTok has pushed back on accusations that it poses national security risks and strongly opposed the legislation. They didn't actually convince anybody, but they did push back, I guess. A TikTok spokesperson slammed the House for a rushed process on the bill, and they did it while dancing to a popular tune. So that's neat. That's what I like about TikTok. This process was secret, and the bill was jammed through for one reason. Was it, though? It's a ban. Yeah. We are hopeful that the Senate will consider the facts, listen to their constituents, and realize the impact on the economy. 7 million small businesses and 170 million Americans who use our service, the spokesperson said. Although the ban passed with bipartisan support, there was also vocal opposition on both sides of the aisle. I am highly concerned about our data being collected and being misused by both foreign adversaries and also domestic companies, but this bill does not fix that problem, said Representative Maxwell Frost, a Democrat of Florida. Okay, that's bad. He was also among Democrats who raised concerns about how the bill could infringe on users' free speech rights. The ACLU and the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, .edu, also raised those concerns about the bill. Trump, the presumptive GOP nominee, was the strongest force from the right who opposed the bill. The strongest. The very strongly strong. He cast his opposition around how a ban might benefit rival social media company Facebook. Trump's opposition to a possible TikTok ban came after he met with Jeff Yass, a major GOP donor and investor in TikTok. Trump said Yass did not bring up TikTok during the conversation. They just talked because they're both rich guys. Sure. Biden said he would sign the bill if it was passed by Congress, leaving it now up to the Senate to act. It is unclear if the Senate will bring up the legislation. Chuck Schumer said the Senate will review the legislation when it comes over from the House, which it has, so, okay. Gallagher. Who's Gallagher? Is he the sponsor of the bill? That's right. Said on Tuesday ahead of the vote that there's a lot of interest in praised Senators Mark Warner of Virginia, my guy, and idiot Supreme Marco Rubio of Florida, the chair and ranking members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, respectively, for their work. They clearly understand the threat that the current ownership structure poses, and so I look to work with my Senate colleagues as this moves forward. Let's see. Rubio and Warner expressed support for the House bill, so there's that. I guess it might work. Yeah, I don't really want to read the rest of this one. This is pretty dumb, quite honestly. Let's see. At the end here, there's a couple other comments from some others. Susan Ariel Aronson, a research professor of international affairs at George Washington University, said the bill is contradictory to the rule of law. She also said it doesn't address the root of the problem, and banning one firm will likely lead to another popping up in the future without addressing the real problem. Sarah Krebs, director of the Tech Policy Institute at Cornell University, everybody's got one, said she isn't confident the bill will actually sidestep the free speech concerns raised in previous attempts. ByteDance has said they will not divest TikTok, so I have no reason to think that they would exercise that option, she said. And then it's up to the courts after that, I guess. And as I have seen others observe on social media, quite prominently, though I didn't put it aside at any point, somebody was pointing out the chief complaint was, well, we don't want TikTok. We don't want the Chinese Communist Party to control our children's personal data that they collect over the internet. And somebody pointing out, how about if nobody got to do that? Why ban TikTok? Why not ban the collection of that kind of personal data, particularly from children? And I guess it's semi-banned, allegedly from children. All they have to do, though, is click, I'm not one of those children, and then they get to use this service. But, I mean, really, the real point here is there probably ought to be legislation about banning or severely limiting the collection of personalized information over the internet for monetized use, which is something that the European Union has made great strides in. But here in the United States, people who are in that business have made themselves billionaires doing it and are, essentially contributing enough money that our legislators are, for some strange reason, uninterested in protecting the children, or you, or me, or voters of any stripe from that kind of exploitation. So, oh well, sorry, but it's a good question. Too bad it won't be happening here in this country. All right, so there's the TikTok thing. I better go and see what this one is about here. Some of these unlabeled things from Twitter and elsewhere. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that was an interesting tidbit. Is that something to include today? I don't know. Maybe as we're running up towards the break. Let's see. This one, I'll find it, came to me how? Let's see. It was one of our local tipsters. There it is. Patrick Snyder sent this one along with the note. I did not know this. This an observation from the bad place, Twitter, but from a good source. George Takei, who I think is on Blue Sky and probably likewise made the same observation there, but that's not where Patrick was hanging out, so that's okay. It is this interesting tidbit. What's it, how is it presented here? You know what? I'll just get right to it. This, an interesting fact, I guess I'll trust George Takei on this one. But I suppose you could take a look at it from a historical perspective and see if it is verifiable this way. But I thought I saw somebody else making a similar point today. Maybe they were just repeating what he had to say. And it is this. When Hitler rose to power as German Chancellor in 1933, everyone remembers that, right? Okay. He enacted policies to rid the country of, well, some German terminology here. Don't really ask me to pronounce this, but it translates to lives unworthy of living. It's be, I don't know, lebensunwerts Leben. Whatever you have, I don't know. Ask a German. Fahrvergnügen, as far as I'm concerned. But it translates to lives unworthy of living. This is what he's trying to put a stop to, allegedly. His targets, of course, include who lives lives unworthy of living. Jews, Roma people, previously known derogatorily, I guess, as gypsies, in case you had not figured that one out yet. Disabled people, and, of course, communists. You know, pretty much the same thing as being disabled. But also, specifically, homosexuals and transsexuals. Yes, even in the 30s. That's right. I mean, one of the larger points here is there have been transsexuals for a very, very, very long time. Longer even than 1933. I have also seen other people bringing up records of ancient civilizations making explicit reference to the phenomenon. And for some reason, it's popular among Republicans in particular to say, what is it with all this trans stuff? Just all of a sudden, everybody thinks they're trans. They invented it. It's probably the internet. It's movies. It's rap music, whatever the hell they want to blame it on. No, it's actually several thousand years old. Kind of, as it turns out, hand in hand with the evolution of the species. But I digress, and it's almost time for our break. George goes on to say, though, while many are familiar with haunting images of the first book burnings in Germany, which took place in May of 1933, most aren't fully aware of their origin story, and I wasn't, and neither was Patrick, and that's why we're reading it. The books and texts that provided the fuel for that first bonfire came from the library of the Institute for Sexual Research, founded in 1919. By Magnus Hirschfeld, a gay Jewish doctor, probably a dangerous environment for gay Jewish doctors. Anyway, Scientific American notes, and you can believe them, the Institute was full of life everywhere and provided incredible and groundbreaking gender affirmation care to trans individuals. In early days, too. Its mission was to provide a center for research, teaching, and healing and refuge that could free the individual from physical ailments, psychological afflictions, and social deprivation. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. Yes, let's continue on with George Takei's notes on the origins of Nazi book burning events in the 30s. So apparently the fuel for the first book burning bonfire came from this library of the Institute for Sexual Research, founded in 1919 by Magnus Hirschfeld, a gay Jewish doctor. The institute having been described, as they say, as providing groundbreaking gender affirmation care to trans individuals. Its mission to provide a center for research, teaching, healing, and refuge that could free the individual from physical ailments, psychological afflictions, and social deprivation. In other words, sounded like a pretty good idea. But, as he continues, and in fact using the words, in other words, the first book burning in Germany, which led to copycat bonfires around the country, was an attack on a trans care institution. There are echoes of this today. Of course, the far right has specifically chosen to target trans care centers in America, including repeated bomb threats to Boston Children's Hospital for providing gender-affirming medical care. So, an excellent and good point, and a reminder that this is something that's been with us for some time. By the way, having opened Twitter against my will, I wanted to just check something out here because apparently Judge Cannon, Aileen Cannon, is trending in some way, and I wondered whether there was any interesting news from that. And I can't. It's difficult to discern on Twitter whether anything real and substantial is happening here. So maybe that's just not the source for us on the fly anyway. So, all right. Back to Pocket. Having checked out what that blind link was all about, I thought I might dive into a few other issues as well. Let's see. Some interesting news from out of some small bore news, local news that is of national interest because it's illustrative of a trend. This time, a piece from NBC News' Brandy Zadrozny, who's reporting on a small city in Oklahoma. It's Enid, Oklahoma, which elected a white nationalist, I guess, to local office. And the question is, will it be able to vote him out? Interesting question. Let's see what's going on here. Judd Blevins, a city commissioner in Enid, Oklahoma, marched in the 2017 White Nationalist Unite the Right rally. I don't know whether he was subsequently elected or was an elected official at the time, but now he faces a recall vote. Recalls not just for use to recall Robin Voss in Wisconsin, right? These days it can be anywhere. This time, Enid, Oklahoma. The photo of Judd Blevins was unmistakable. It says, in it, Blevins, bearded and heavy set, held a tiki torch on the University of Virginia campus. That infamous photo. On the eve of Unite the Right. Everyone remembers it, the 2017 coming together of the nation's neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups, which I guess we can now analyze in the context of Amanda Marcotte's reminder that authoritarians can't really get together and work with one another because they all think the others should all knuckle under to them. Connie Vickers had found the photo online, along with others showing Blevins marching alongside an angry mob. A crowd of men recorded throughout the night, spitting and shouting, "Jews will not replace us." Vickers had it enlarged at a local print and copy shop. He's proud of it. On a January night in 2023, Vickers had it enlarged. Okay, I gotcha. And she and Nancy Presnall, I thought it was him that did it and was going to frame it and put it on his wall. Sorry. On a January night in 2023, then, she and Nancy Presnall, best friends, retirees, and rare Democrats in a deeply red Oklahoma county, brought it to a sparsely attended forum where Blevins, a candidate running to represent Ward 1 on Enid's 6-seat city council, was making his case. They had hoped to get a question in while Blevins was on stage, but settled for confronting him after. Hearts pumping, I can imagine, Presnall and Vickers approached the 41-year-old former Marine. From a kitchen trash bag, Vickers pulled out the blown-up photo of Blevins and asked about his ties to white nationalists. As his campaign manager whisked a red-faced Blevins away, why wasn't he proud? Vickers and Presnall followed, yelling, "Answer the question, Judd!" He ran away from two little old ladies, Presnall recalled, and here's a photo establishing their credentials as two little old ladies, although I can't tell you how tall they are, but there's the photo. 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, Blevins won his race, unseating the Republican incumbent, widely viewed as a devoted public servant, who died from cancer later that year. Voters seem to appreciate Blevins' bio, actually. A veteran, this is the shiny part here, a veteran who'd served in Iraq and who'd worked a manual job in Tulsa before moving back to his hometown to take over his father's roofing business. Sounds all right, minus the Nazi part, though. Blevins described himself as a man of God and extolled the city as a place where traditional values remained the norm. And tiki torches as well, I guess. The message resounded in Enid, a city nearly 100 miles north of Oklahoma City, with just over 50,000 people. In 1980, more than 90% of the area's residents were white. Now, less than 3 in 4 are, but it's still pretty white. Enid is both one of the country's most quickly diversifying places and one of the most conservative, where residents describe the ever-present whirring of jets from nearby Vance Air Force Base as the sound of freedom. Oh boy. Anyway, it's not clear how many voters knew about Blevins' white nationalist ties. There was an article in the local paper which Blevins labeled a hit piece, but beyond the confrontation with Vickers and Presnell, it just wasn't talked about. Blevins wasn't asked about it at campaign events or forums, and his opponent never brought it up. But a white nationalist campaigning for office is one thing, an election is another. His election is another. And because campaigning for office is one thing, and an election is actually not another, it's the same thing. But his winning, that's another thing. And Blevins' win didn't sit well with many in Enid. It marked the beginning of a fight to expel Blevins from the city council, a fight for the very soul of Enid that would unite a coalition of its most progressive residents, divide its conservatives, and show the power of community organizing. And let me just point out, you gotta like the initial results there, uniting its most progressive residents and dividing its conservatives, because that's how you can actually win in a conservative area. Divide the conservatives. And I mean, that's always been true, right? Divide the other side. But this is a good reason to divide them and a good fault line to find in there. It's good for us. It's good for them, quite honestly. Anyway, over the years, grandmothers, I assume they mean, would be branded, I guess grandmothers in general, would be branded Antifa radicals. Local organizers would be accused of attempted murder, and a national white power movement would stake its claim on the city council. And for a growing number of state and local governments confronting extremism in their ranks, the outcome of that fight, Blevins' recall election on April 2nd, it's coming up, okay? Maybe that's why we ought to be talking about it. It's only a couple weeks away. That will serve as either a model or a warning. And we seek by publicizing it to make it a model, I guess. Blevins has declined multiple interview requests. In response to questions about his white nationalist ties, he told a reporter, "I hope you find God." Well, I hope you find him, like, tomorrow. So when, how, and why Blevins got involved with a white supremacist movement may never be known, except insofar as it comes out and as a result of an investigation when he does, like, bomb a federal building or something like that. What is clear is that from at least 2017 to 2019, Blevins was an active leader in Identity Europa, one of the largest among the white nationalist and neo-Nazi groups that collectively made up the alt-right. They're never really great genetic specimens either, recent investigation has found. But anyway, this is what they think. They think they have superior genes, but none of them have any chins. I'm not really sure what they think is going on here. But anyway, in public, Identity Europa eschewed the racist label, opting instead, well, why not, right, for sanitized descriptors like identitarians, who were focused on preserving Western culture, because that's in serious danger. Western culture, not at all the robust thing it seems to be. What with there being Coca-Cola, McDonald's, etc., in the heart of China, Saudi Arabia, Africa, what have you. Doesn't matter where you go. Western culture, totally in trouble. Anyway, but these idiots will save it. Don't worry about it. But privately, in secret meetings and internal online chat groups, members were clear about their motivations and beliefs in posts that praised Nazis, denigrated racial minorities, and professed the superiority of white people, even if they don't have chins. Pseudonymous Identity Europa members spoke candidly about their goal of normalizing racist ideologies and infiltrating conservative politics, which is why, one, Republicans and conservatives can be divided, and why it's good for both Republicans and Democrats to do it. It helps preserve a actual Republican party as opposed to simply replacing it with the Nazi party. Anyway, even that may not be such a great thing, but it's better than having a Nazi party. Let's see. As the group's Oklahoma State coordinator, Blevins flyered its major cities and universities with his group's white nationalist propaganda, organized and participated in banner drops over state highways. Wish maybe some of the people dropping banners would actually drop onto the state highway when they do it. And recruited, interviewed, and accepted new members into the fold. Blevins marched at the Tiki Torch rally alongside hundreds of men in Charlottesville, Virginia in August 2017, and the next day at the Unite the Right, where he carried the original Oklahoma flag. I guess he's mad about the one that they must have had to adopt when they became, state or something? And what, did they have an overtly racist flag first and they were deprived of it later on? I don't know what the story is there. Blevins remained active in the group even after the rally ended in violence, with beatings of counter-protesters and the murder of a 32-year-old paralegal and civil rights activist. That's Heather Heyer, right? They don't name her here for some reason, but okay. In a 2018 podcast, Blevins, who went by the online moniker Conway, interestingly enough, like as in Kellyanne, but without the first name, talked about his passion for recruitment. As we like to say in Identity Europa, there's nothing you can do to stop us, Blevins said. There are a few things, and, alligator pits and bulldozers come to mind, but you're not supposed to say that out loud, I guess. I don't know. As we like to say, there's nothing you can do to stop us. So we won't say anything at all. Let's see. There's, by the way, some audio of Judd Blevins on a white nationalist podcast, if you'd like to hear that. I mean, I would not, but there you have it. Most of this was reported by left-wing news outlets 3 years before Blevins ran for office. So they're not doing a great job opposing him with it, but it's not a very democratic area. So anyway, in March of 2019, Unicorn Riot. What are they? They're a progressive media collective that covers social movements, and they published Identity Europa's private chats, which anti-fascist researchers and journalists then used to identify people who planned and attended the Charlottesville rally. Police, teachers, and members of the military among them. One group matched Conway to Blevins based on photos, biographical details, and Conway's disclosure that he would be marching at Unite the Right with Oklahoma's original flag. That'll help identify him. The progressive news outlet Right Wing Watch published an article soon after outing Blevins to a wider audience. NBC News verified this reporting and unearthed more evidence of Blevins' white supremacist identity, including posts, photos, and a podcast appearance. After his unmasking, which included Antifa activists posting photos of his family and the Tulsa lawn care business where he worked, Blevins shut down his social media accounts. In one of his final messages to the Identity Europa internal chat, he said he was moving back home. And in one of his last tweets, he hinted at wider ambitions. Under another pseudonym, Blevins posted that, quote, our guys, meaning fellow white nationalists, should be supported in pursuing local elected office, such as city council. Basically, positions where one can fly under the radar, yet still be effective, Blevins posted. And, kind of insidious, but probably right. If you hide your motivations, but just do racist stuff as an elected official, everyone just complains, well, he's just a Republican. He's just racist at heart. He's not necessarily a white supremacist, but as it turns out, he's also that. Back in Enid, Blevins kept a low profile, fixing roofs for his dad's company. In 2022, he announced his candidacy, and it didn't take long for the local newspaper to get wind of Blevins' past. The Enid News and Eagle doesn't wade into controversy often, aside from its endorsement of Hillary Clinton in 2016, a gut punch to the city's conservatives that led to a flood of canceled subscriptions. Most stories are of government meetings, high school sports, and features about local heroes and businesses. Cindy Allen, a former editor and publisher and a conservative Republican herself, knew people in Enid would be suspicious of the left-wing outlets that first reported on Blevins. So, over 5 weeks, she and a reporter retraced Right Wing Watch's steps and then published a front-page expose. It's unclear how many people in Enid read the article. Let's be honest, Allen said, the readership of newspapers is a lot lower than it used to be. Blevins declined to be interviewed, but gave the paper a statement alleging that leftists backed by a George Soros-funded media outlet were behind a campaign to brand him a Nazi. She's right about newspapers being read a lot less, obviously. I was just reminded of the fact that the local newspaper had the story on George Santos before his election and printed it, and everybody said, oh, I didn't read that, actually. Didn't have anything to say about it. Anyway, around the same time, Connie Vickers was conducting her own investigation. She pored over Blevins' old posts, collecting the ones where he mentioned Hitler admiringly and joked about wearing a swastika armband. Hardy-har. Vickers scoured news footage from Charlottesville for Blevins. She collected screenshots and forwarded them to her friend Nancy Presnell. She made her sign. She, armed with that evidence, representing the Garfield County Democrats, Presnell began speaking at city council meetings. At a meeting in January 2023, a week before the candidates' forum, she warned about Blevins' candidacy and support, calling it an underlying evil that is coming to our town. Usually that pricks people's ears up, but I guess only if you're saying it's Satan. Well, close. It's this guy. Blevins won by 36 votes in an election where 808 people, less than 15% of the ward's 5,600 registered voters, came out. A dismal turnout on par with municipal elections across the country. In other words, it's not unusual, and these are the sorts of things that can happen there. The credit or blame for Blevins' victory depends on whom you ask. Some say it was name recognition. Blevins shares a last name but is no relation to the beloved owners of the only locally operated grocery store, Jumbo Foods. Good old Jumbo Foods. I don't know. Anyway, most credit a local conservative activist who managed his campaign and his supporters from the Enid Freedom Fighters, a Facebook group turned political force that warred against mask mandates, and then certain library books, because the mask thing went away, so they had to turn into something else, like Moms for Liberty did. Blevins' campaign materials, which leaned into this hard-right Republican identity, were unprecedented in an Enid City Council election, which had always been nonpartisan. And yet, no discernible reaction against making them blatantly partisan, so why isn't everybody doing it? Blevins' win represented the kind of quiet progress white power groups had been preaching. As the alt-right splintered after Charlottesville, because of what... probably, at least in part, of what Amanda Marcotte was telling us about getting authoritarians together. Leaders urged their members to log off the internet, remove their masks, and get involved in the political establishment. The Republican Party is comprised largely of white, aging baby boomers. White supremacist James Alsop told Identity Europa conference goers in 2018, and why don't they Bayraktar those conferences? I don't know. As baby boomers age out, the positions they hold will become vacant all throughout society, and somebody will have to fill them. Most of the avowed white supremacists who ran for office in 2018 lost. Increasingly, though, far-right activists and extremists, including those espousing white supremacist beliefs, are faring better. In 2022, the Anti-Defamation League's Center on Extremism identified more than 100 right-wing extremists running for office nationwide. 19 won. So you can defeat the vast majority of them, but if you're not defeating all of them, like the old SDI example, right? If you could shoot down 99% of the nuclear warheads launched by the Soviet Union, that's still 100-plus nuclear warheads landing on the United States. It's not that helpful. Similarly here, 19% of the right-wing extremists running for office actually won. That's way too many. The fallout from these local elections has rocked communities from Florida to Idaho. Christian nationalists in Ottawa County, Michigan, have you heard about them? Pushed out their moderate Republican counterparts in 2023 and took over a county board. To no good result, certainly, but it did happen. The same happened with far-right activists the year before in conservative Shasta County, California. In Enid, Blevins' election galvanized an opposition. In March of 2023, around 100 people, including Vickers and Presnell, met at a community center. By the end of the evening, they had formed the Enid Social Justice Committee and decided on its first order of business, recalling Judd Blevins. And let's say, for the record here, that's no small turnout, 100 people. But you know, you might wonder, well, what can we do here in super conservative, super red Enid, Oklahoma among progressives? And I mean, if you get a good chunk of the people together and you get a good cause, you can get a good chunk of these people together. 100 people. Well, what can we do with 100 people? Well, recall that it was 808 people in total that voted in this election, right? That actually put him in power. And what was it? He won by 3. What was the vote total? I'll see if I can't find it. But in addition to being a super low turnout in general, it was a pretty small margin. And even though I think it was 300 and something out of the 800 people who came out to vote, putting together 100 people in the face of 300, well, you've sliced the margin by a third just by showing up. Then if you actually conduct your campaign, imagine what could happen. Okay, I can't find the numbers offhand here. I don't know how far back to scroll for it, but there you go. I think that's an important thing to note in all of this. So, even in what look like relatively small numbers, as Greg keeps reminding us, the margins are narrow for these guys. So, showing up in numbers of 100 can actually be quite important. Here we are. Oh, I had thought, he won by 360 votes, which is actually quite sizable out of the 800. But I added a 0 where it didn't belong. 100 people showed up to say, what the hell can we do about this guy? The margin of his victory in his first election was 36 votes. So, 100 people will take care of that. And you might have to ask those guys, out of the 100 of you here today, how many of you bothered to vote in that election? And I know it's an annoying thing to be asked, and people are busy and they have their priorities, but that probably changed a lot of minds about the necessity of voting, even in things that you think are stupid, right? So, 100 people should take care of the job. And 1/8 of the electorate at that point, that's a pretty serious chunk of the voters there. That'll make a difference. So where did we leave off here? There was the 100 people that gathered. There we are. And then they decided on its first order of business, recalling Judd Blevins. Now, the group elected a chair and vice chair. Christy Baldwin, a 58-year-old mother of 3, easily spotted in Enid, with her pink hair and white cowboy boots. And James Neal, 48, and a priest of a small, inclusive Orthodox Catholic parish, and a local firebrand known for his flowing garments and embrace of the LGBTQ community. So you might think, well, these aren't people that are going to be able to organize Enid, Oklahoma, but it turns out that maybe they really can. They created a Facebook page, so that's instant success, right? And urged followers to sign an online petition. They launched a website that laid out the evidence against Blevins. They made buttons and t-shirts emblazoned with images of raised fists and hosted grill outs. Cookouts with a grill, I guess. Grill outs. I never heard it referred to that way. Bake sales and protests. When former state senator Jake Merrick hosted Blevins on his Freedom 96.9 talk radio show in March, he noted Blevins was, quote, under attack. They would like to see me apologize and denounce everything that I'm accused of, but I don't have anything to apologize for, Nazi Blevins said. On May 1st, 2.5 months after he was elected, Blevins was sworn in at City Hall. Dozens of Enid Social Justice Committee members gathered outside, holding signs that read, "What happened in Charlottesville, Judd?" and chanted a riff on the hateful Unite the Right cry, "Judd, we will replace you." I kind of like that one. That would take time. Per Enid law, a city commissioner must serve 6 months before a recall petition can even be filed. In the meantime, the ESJC, that's the Enid Social Justice Committee, spoke at nearly every city council meeting. Done a way to go there. The last item on the agenda, after prayer, the pledge, and a plea from the local animal shelter to adopt a pet in need after the council addressed the mundane but essential tasks required of local governments, which recently included the reprogramming of traffic lights and a law designating the size limits for pot-bellied pigs, is public comment. ESJC was such a constant presence that the mayor changed the time allotted for public comment on non-agenda items from 3 minutes to 1. Blevins' record on the council, apart from the chaos, has been mostly without incident. He's voted with the rest of the council and attended veterans events at the base and store openings. He's hard-right posturing as one Blevins' supporters, who signed up for public comment to counter the mob of weirdos and miscreants at the ESJC and compare Blevins to venerated conservative figures like Ronald Reagan, who sucks. A woman with a Let's Go Brandon t-shirt beseeched the council to look inside their own hearts and ask whether their pasts included anything that they wouldn't want known. That's not really an inspiring place to speak from. Another man with a long ginger beard commended Blevins for his courage in attending the Charlottesville rally, which he called a demonstration to protect American history. Outside the council, too, Enid's conservatives were rallying. Wade Burleson, former president of the Southern Baptists of Oklahoma and a retired pastor of Enid's largest church, was an early supporter of Blevins on Facebook. Way to go, clergyman. Burleson, who also sits on the Faith Advisory Committee of the state's controversial school superintendent, Ryan Walters, the one who hired libs of TikTok, said attempts to unseat Blevins are a race bait trap. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, we're still continuing to read about what's happening in little old Enid, Oklahoma, because I think it's illustrative of things happening in various locales around the country. So important to have this example. So just a reminder that the state of Oklahoma's controversial school superintendent, Ryan Walters, has the hirer of libs of TikTok for some stupid position or another in the education department there, even though she's not living anywhere near Oklahoma, came to Blevins' defense, saying attempts to unseat him are a race bait trap, an attempt by communists and the mainstream media to divide the world over race. Yes, the attempt of getting rid of the guy who's attempting to divide the world over race is what's really dividing the world over race. As you know, the real Nazis are the anti-Nazis, and you made me a Nazi by being anti-fascist. Sure. Anyway, from the office of his new ministry, an old Pizza Hut remodeled by his wife, Burleson, is that the good guy or the bad guy? Yeah. Burleson explained that Blevins' time with white nationalism was a response to his service in the Marines and a reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement. I guess now we remember which guy this one is. I wasn't sure which pastor, which clergyman would base his church in a remodeled Pizza Hut. Would that be the Southern Baptist guy, or would that be the more tolerant guy? Like, I could see either one of them basing it in a remodeled Pizza Hut. It could be the cheapest and easiest piece of real estate available, and so therefore perhaps what the more liberal priest chooses to use, or it could be so corporate and cheesy, and we're just looking to move into any abandoned space and knock it down and build a mega church. like the Southern Baptists might do. Anyway, as it turns out, it's the Southern Baptists, because you got the comment there. Well, look, Blevins is justified in becoming a Nazi because, after all, he was in the Marines, and then there was the Black Lives Matter movement, so naturally something Nazi. He's made some mistakes, Burleson said, but he's not a racist, except he's joined a racist organization and dedicated his life to racism. But other than that, he's not racist. By the fall, organizers with the Enid Social Justice Committee were knocking on doors in Ward 1, collecting signatures. But committee members agreed they would forego a recall if Blevins acknowledged his white nationalist activities and associations, renounced them, and apologized. But of course, Blevins refused. Behind closed doors, Enid Mayor David Mason said Blevins was more forthcoming. He admitted it, said Mason, so then why not do it now? An insurance executive who was elected at the same time as Blevins, Mason has a way of wearing his exasperation on his face during heated council meetings. He whips off his glasses, breathes in deeply, and leans back in his swivel chair. He's concerned about what Blevins' ties with hate groups will do for business in a city that's desperate to grow. Every time you Google Enid, Oklahoma, that's what comes up, Mason said. Well, then confess and get rid of him. In a private meeting in November with Blevins, the city manager and attorney asked this is a meeting with Blevins, the city manager, and the city attorney. Mason, the mayor, asked, "Was that you in Charlottesville? Is that you in those photographs? Did you write all those hateful text messages?" "Yes," Blevins said. According to Mason and the city attorney, "Are you still involved with those groups?" Mason asked. "I don't have to answer that question," Blevins replied. This is more forthcoming. That's amazing. That's his version of, he's more forthcoming in private. "My thought," Mason remembers, was, "You just did answer that question," right? Mason couldn't remove Blevins, but he wanted to do something. So he wrote a measure for the next meeting's agenda, a censure that would announce the loss of confidence in Blevins and formally repudiate white nationalism. Meanwhile, Blevins and his supporters went on offense. On November 12th, Blevins walked into the Enid Police Department and filed a report. The brake line on his silver pickup had been cut, he said. I guess he cut it. And he offered as suspects 2 members of the Enid Social Justice Committee who have denied involvement. He typed up an account of his claims on city letterhead, blaming the attack on far left-wing fringe groups. He went back on Jake Merrick's radio show, where he asked the audience to pray for him and the Enid police as they investigated. Merrick described it as an attempted murder, a characterization that Blevins repeated at a future council meeting in a critique of the media for its lack of coverage. I guess an attempted murder of an elected official isn't newsworthy. Sounds like a backwards B carving to me. Anyway, outside of Enid, news of the upcoming censure vote and the alleged attempt on Blevins' life attracted the attention of Blevins' other allies, national white supremacist groups. Wow. I don't have to answer that question, except here they come to your rescue. Jason Kessler, a neo-Nazi, an organizer of the Charlottesville rally, and Jared Taylor, a self-described white advocate who edits the racist website American Renaissance, came out in support of Blevins. Taylor posted a video praising Blevins as the perfect man for the job. Leaders of the American Freedom Party, a white power group formed by skinheads in Southern California, have been following events in Enid closely. Back when Blevins won, the group celebrated, posting to their Telegram channels that Enid showed the political appetite for white supremacist messaging. Join us to run for office under a pro-white banner today. Now that Blevins was under threat of censure, the American Freedom Party urged its members to write to the other city council members asking them to vote no. One neo-Nazi blogger called the community organizers with ESJC outrageous Antifa commandos. They are, of course, normal people. The blogger wrote, "Doesn't it feel like this could and should be used to springboard our guys into a permanent takeover of Enid, Oklahoma?" No. The chamber was packed with members of the ESJC and Blevins supporters for the November 21st meeting where the motion to censure Blevins would be decided. Mason, the mayor, was sure he had the votes. And then Derwin Norwood spoke. Norwood, the owner of a concrete business, a registered Republican, and the council's only black member, took the floor for 8 minutes. In a fiery speech that sounded at times like a sermon, Norwood told of his own experiences with racism and quoted scripture. "We need to stop this foolishness. Stop fighting. Stop bickering," Norwood said. And then, although Blevins hadn't directly asked for his forgiveness, Norwood was moved by the Holy Spirit, allegedly, to offer it. He remembers it like an out-of-body experience. "Stand up," Norwood told Blevins. "Do you love me?" "Yes, I do, as a brother in Christ," Blevins replied. "I forgive you," Norwood said, and the men embraced to applause and groans. With that, the votes were gone. The council voted unanimously to table the matter until after the recall election. No one, not the mayor or Blevins or the ESJC or Norwood himself, had expected the display, photos of which led news coverage and white nationalist websites alike. Norwood knows his voice carries extra weight when the topic is racism, and he knows that his forgiveness and that hug might have given cover to Blevins, but he didn't see any other way. "A lot of people were mad at me," Norwood said, sitting in the lobby of Enid's new but empty downtown hotel. "But I'm proud of what I did. I was an example of righteousness." Maybe. "Besides," he continued, "now no one can say that we influenced the election." That's maybe not the most important thing, but okay. The ESJC collected more than enough signatures and filed its petition to recall Blevins. There was still one hiccup, finding someone to replace him. They discussed supporting a progressive Democrat, but this was no time for delusions. Blevins was already sending out campaign mailers featuring pro-LGBTQ Facebook posts from Baldwin and Neal, the chair and vice chair, as evidence that any candidate who tried to unseat him would be a tool of the ESJC. At a city council meeting in December, Blevins pointed his finger toward Baldwin and offered a warning. "I want anybody who's thinking about filing, to understand this. You will be the Social Justice Squad's candidate," he said. "You will have to campaign as this candidate in a ward that went for Donald Trump by 80%. So good luck with that." In January, Cheryl Patterson, 61, entered the race, a move she told friends was a result of temporary insanity. In announcing her campaign, the grandmother, church youth leader, former teacher, and longtime Republican, asked supporters not to speak negatively about Blevins. "I hope the focus will be on what each candidate has to offer and the positive things happening in Enid," she wrote on Facebook. In interviews and at fundraisers, Patterson has repeated what became her unofficial campaign motto, reminiscent of Warren G. Harding's 1920 slogan, reminiscent of that to absolutely no one except, I guess, historians, and good for Brandy Zadrozny that she knows what this is, but people are probably not reminiscing about Warren G. Harding's campaign. But here it is. "We need civility," Patterson told the News and Eagle. "Just normalcy." And that's true, and she might even win, but I don't know if they're really taking care of business out there in Enid when they've got people cooperating with them who are like, well, we just want normal stuff, and also let's hug these guys and forgive them. I don't know if that's the answer. Anyway, neither Patterson nor her campaign manager responded to interview requests. People close to her said, better to keep away from national news. Probably true. Even offering a comment could be spun by Blevins and his supporters as collusion. Signs for both Patterson and Blevins dot the lawns of Ward 1. Can I speak at all here? Most people don't show up to city council meetings and haven't been following the Blevins saga. There's no polling in Enid, but in talking to people, those who plan to vote next month are split on who should win. Enid police never announced the results of that investigation into Blevins' attempted murder claims, by the way, but in December, a month after it was opened, the police closed Blevins' case. Members of the Enid Social Justice Committee were never interviewed. In his final report, obtained through an open records request, the investigating detective wrote that a review of hours of surveillance footage of Blevins' truck around town showed no evidence of a crime. The only person around the vehicle at any of the places is Judd, the report said. Members of the ESJC said they are aware, if not downright afraid, that Blevins' allegations put them on the radar of Nazi groups. They're careful about their meetings now, keeping the location secret until the last minute. So I guess that's an interesting point about, he didn't get away with his false accusations of attempted murder, but he did plant the seed in the minds of Nazis and racists around the country that it totally did happen, and these are the people who totally did do it, and they're getting away with it, and justice denied. I'm telling you, you can do something about it if you take justice into your own hands, and now they have to meet in secret. Well, that's no good either. One evening this month, a few dozen members met at Jezebel's, a tea house and event space with witchy goods like crystals and tarot cards for sale. Okay. They talked about what's next after they complete the mission that brought them together: a memorial plaque for a local civil rights leader, a scarf drive for Enid's unhoused, and assembling kits for people released from the Garfield County Jail. In the meantime, Baldwin reminded the group not to campaign for Patterson, to steer clear of Blevins' accusations that they're behind her run. But they're all holding their breath. Mayor Mason is too. Hate has no place in Enid, Mason said, and if he were to win again, I think there will be another recall. I think it will continue until someone will beat him. We're just not going to. That's not us. That is not who the people of Enid are. Well, we've yet to find out exactly who they are and what they're going to do about it, but interesting situation. Certainly interesting in that it's happening everywhere, and also interesting in that it can be disarmed by people with possibly the best of intentions, and yet, where are we going to go if this is always constantly Democrats or liberals jumping out of the way of the Nazis so as not to offend? Well, I don't know what to make of it. Okay, let's see. We got some time for a couple of other things. There's lots of news and lots of directions we should go in, and perhaps where was I just put something aside that came across the transom via social media that's probably important and worth noting. Might lead us to some further discussion either today or possibly tomorrow. Oh, but by the way, I just saw an AP news alert here coming up. A restraining order against Lauren Boebert's ex-husband dropped at her request. Oh, okay. Somewhat of interest, but worth the time to read? Possibly not. Worth showing to you as a link? Well, only if it'll actually come up. But I guess you can't actually click on it. So, oh, there it goes. All right. So, fine. I'll pocket it. And I'll let you read about it. I don't think it's going to affect much of anything. But since we had discussed her latest campaign efforts, I thought I would raise it or take a look at see what it was all about. But a different entanglement than the one we were talking about. Now, this news from the Senate today, not about TikTok, but rather Chuck Schumer, listed here as top Democrat Schumer, which he is, calls for new elections in Israel, saying Netanyahu has, quote, lost his way. This is sort of the new angle of approach from Democrats in particular on the many swirling issues around Israel, both directly related to Gaza and not. I mean, there are a number of reasons to be calling for new elections in Israel and saying Netanyahu has lost his way, not even necessarily related directly to Gaza, but that only adds to it. And of course, that should be the primary issue. But he was ripe for replacement even before the Gaza war, and this has only exacerbated things. But this is interesting. I've seen it in there's been news over the last couple of days of Biden speaking out explicitly, but also reportedly behind the scenes saying, yeah, we really have to get on the case here, and maybe it's time to do what we can as the United States officially to nudge Netanyahu aside. How much power and ability they have to do it remains to be seen. But let's see what Schumer has to say on this, because that's kind of an important development. Mary Claire Jelinek and Ellen Nickmeyer are the reporters here for the AP. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling on Israel to hold new elections, saying he believes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has lost his way in the Israeli bombardment of Gaza and a growing humanitarian crisis there. Schumer, the first Jewish majority leader in the Senate and the highest-ranking Jewish official in the U.S., will strongly criticize Netanyahu in a lengthy speech Thursday morning, that's now, I guess, on the Senate floor. In prepared remarks obtained by the Associated Press, Schumer says the prime minister has put himself in a coalition of far-right extremists, it's true, and as a result, he's been too willing to tolerate the civilian toll in Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows. Again, a reminder, it is a remarkable feat to lose a PR war with Hamas. That's tough to do, but he's done it. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah, Schumer will say. And this, by the way, follows closely on the heels of a, did I put this aside? I probably did not. But of, why can't I remember exactly who has just written the column about it there? And there are many, and I will try and find it. And, Friedman's column. Okay. Let's see if we can't find it, because it's probably worth reviewing. It's a rare event. But it does happen from time to time that, he's sees these things clearly enough that even we will read and agree. But let me read about Schumer first, and then perhaps we can, add this to the roundup and close out the day. So, yes, Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah, Schumer will say, and many would say that it already has, but it's slower and more difficult in coming among the Jewish community here in the United States, because there's been a long time, especially for older Democrats and Jewish Americans, that it's been a long time coming, but there's a long tradition of generalized support for Israel, but growing discontent, of course, with Netanyahu. But it takes time, as it does to convince people to move away from Trump. It takes time to convince people that they can find a comfortable way of separating themselves from what's happening in the Gaza war in ways that doesn't necessarily abandon the idea of Israel's existence, which I know that there are people who insist that perhaps it's time to give up on that as well. And yeah, there's some logic to it, but there's also some logic to what the hell are we going to do now with people who are living there? And it's not that easy a thing. And in reality, to just say, well, purge the face of the earth of everybody who didn't originally live in some place some number of years ago, but fix a number of years, because if you go further back than that, then you find, maybe they did live here. It's a common problem. Anyway, back to this more coherent retelling of what Schumer plans to say. The speech comes as an increasing number of Democrats have pushed back against Israel, and as President Joe Biden has stepped up public pressure on Netanyahu's government, warning that he needs to pay more attention to the civilian death toll in Gaza. The U.S. this month began airdrops of badly needed humanitarian aid and announced it will establish a temporary pier to get more assistance into Gaza via sea. Schumer has so far positioned himself as a strong ally of the Israeli government, visiting the country just days after the brutal October 7th attack by Hamas, and giving a lengthy speech on the Senate floor in December decrying, quote, brazen and widespread anti-Semitism, the likes of which we haven't seen in generations in this country, if ever. But he will say on the Senate floor on Thursday that the Israeli people are being stifled right now by a governing vision that is stuck in the past. Although, I don't know where it's stuck. If we could go back to Israel's past, things might not be quite as horrible as they are. There are, of course, those who say there should be no Israel at all, past, present, or future. No, not likely to get me over to that position anytime real soon. But hey, you never know. you can keep working, I suppose. But, there would be people calling for that who otherwise would normally be very interested in the original socialist experiment of Israel, but we'll have to reconcile in their minds the support for Western liberal socialism, but also nativistic, and that's what it is. I know they'll be upset to be associated with a nativistic movement, but that's what it is. And maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. After all, there are times, I guess that's the inherent contradiction. I'm not for nativists and nativism, except when it's Native Americans or Palestinians. But then it's different somehow for some reason. Well, yeah, I understand why. And don't worry about it. We don't think you're bad or dumb. We just have a conundrum to work out here. Anyway, Schumer says Netanyahu, who has long opposed Palestinian statehood, is one of several obstacles in the way of the two-state solution pushed by the United States. He's also blaming right-wing Israelis and Hamas and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas as well. Why not throw him in there as well? He's okay. He can take it. Until they are all removed from the equation, he says, there will never be peace in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. And I don't know whether that necessarily includes Abbas or not, but maybe in someone's view. Schumer says the United States cannot dictate the outcome of an election in Israel. That's true. But a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel at a time when so many Israelis have lost their confidence in the vision and direction of the government. It's unclear how Schumer's unusually direct call will be received in Israel. The next parliamentary elections are expected in 2026, but could be held before then in a parliamentary system. It can always happen. Many Israelis hold Netanyahu responsible for failing to stop the October 7th cross-border raid by Hamas, which killed 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and his popularity appears to have taken a hit as a result. You would think, right? U.S. priorities in the region have increasingly been hampered by Netanyahu's cabinet, which is dominated by ultra-nationalists. The far-right cabinet members share Netanyahu's opposition to Palestinian statehood and other aims that successive U.S. administrations have been seen as essential to resolving Palestinian-Israeli conflicts long-term. In a hot mic moment, while speaking to lawmakers after his State of the Union address, Biden promised a come to Jesus moment with Netanyahu, which might not have as much power with Jewish Israelis as you would think, even though, our early historical figure of greater Israel was Jesus. But yes, that's interesting. Well, okay. Anyway, Vice President Kamala Harris, Schumer, and other lawmakers met last week in Washington with Benny Gantz. Greg mentioned that, a member of Israel's war cabinet and a far more popular rival of Netanyahu, a visit that drew a rebuke from the Israeli prime minister. Gantz joined Netanyahu's government in the war cabinet soon after the Hamas attacks, but Gantz is expected to leave government once the heaviest fighting subsides, signaling the period of national unity has ended. A return to mass demonstrations could ramp up pressure on Netanyahu's deeply unpopular coalition to hold early elections. Schumer said that if Israel tightens its control over Gaza and the West Bank and creates a de facto single state, then there should be no reasonable expectation that Hamas and their allies will lay down arms. It could mean constant war, he said. As a democracy, Israel has the right to choose its own leaders, and we should let the chips fall where they may, Schumer said, but the important thing is that Israelis are given a choice. Well, that's something. And yeah, I told you that there was an interesting new column from Thomas Friedman, of course, in the New York Times. Netanyahu is making Israel radioactive. And that's all we really even have time for, is giving you the headline. But that's basically it. But lots of people have asked this question. Ezra Klein asked this question not long ago. Is the supposedly security-minded government of Benjamin Netanyahu, in fact, making either Israel or Jews globally any more secure or, in fact, less secure? It's an interesting prospect here in the United States, as they say, and around the world, with rising anti-Semitism as a result of the way the war is being conducted in Gaza and other things as well. You can certainly point to an ongoing trend in rising anti-Semitism. But if American Jews aren't particularly supportive of Netanyahu in the first place, and our security in this country is threatened by his conduct of the war in Gaza, is it helpful? No, it's not. And if propping up Israel as a state is meant to, as it frequently is stated, guarantee the security of Jews around the world, which, is really kind of a weird way of stating the purpose and existence of Israel. Does it guarantee that it supposedly guarantees that Jews around the world will have a safe place to go as refuge where there will be a Jewish country? But one, that's never really been the case. It's not necessarily a particularly secure place to live in general, and it's only making things worse by engaging in this war under these circumstances. But things were bad to begin with, obviously, anyway, so it's kind of an excuse with less and less power. And anyway, so he makes a very interesting case. Maybe we can read that tomorrow. There's a very interesting international perspective on it published not all that long ago, reminding us that the vast majority of the world, which doesn't have a personal stake here, sees Israel as a very different kind of entity, not just in its human rights violations in Gaza, not just in the conduct of the war, not just in their very existence, but the justification, really. The idea, of course, that the outcome of, or the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust being used as justification for the establishment of Israel, there's a vast majority of the world that says, yeah, welcome to European hegemony, welcome to European colonialism and repression. We've all kind of suffered holocausts around the world for a long time. Interesting perspective, to say the least.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning.
Interesting place for us to leave today. But interesting place also to turn it over for Justice Putnam to pick things up with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I guess we've laid a lot at his feet here at this point. But don't worry, he's got his own approach to stories from around the country and around the world, as usual, prepared and ready to go. And he'll carry you into the rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow.